All right, welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht here alongside Malcolm Carter for hour number one. Jad Chambers producing. Tommy will be with us in just a little bit. We've got a lot to get to today. We'll continue to navigate the NFL, look ahead to the Super Bowl, Chiefs, 49ers, significant injury news from a day ago as it pertains to the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got college basketball tonight, Kansas State in action. We've got all kinds of good stuff. College basketball talk we didn't get to yesterday. We'll dive a little deeper in today. Dan Ezreal, the executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, joins us top of the second hour. We'll give away some HTO tea and coffee throughout the show here, too. So be sure and tune in to the KFH hotline at 869-1240 to get your opportunity to win there. Welcome in, everybody. Good morning. How are you? Malcolm, we'll allow just sort of a Lions pity party because we just so happen to be joined by a massive Lions fan.
Of course.
And I think everybody's feeling for you a little bit. I think Chiefs fans know how you feel, not in recent years, but in a lot of years, in the past, Malcolm. Have you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how devastated are you still here Tuesday now after the game?
I'm feeling about a 5 right now. Yesterday was much tougher than today, but I'm starting to kind of take that glass half full approach to the season and everything that came from it. So say about a 5 right now.
So I'm curious, is it worse that you were right there in position to win it, or would it have been worse to just get destroyed in that game? What would have been the worst outcome? Which is more painful, do you think?
I think I'll take the unpopular opinion here. I think getting blown out would have been worse. And I say that because there's always going to be that crowd of folks when you're in that situation. They're like, those guys shouldn't have been there. This was a one-off type of season, kind of a one and done type of thing. But I think by us being in that game and us being within a few decisions of winning the game, I think it does give you a bit of optimism that, hey, if we're back in this situation again, who's to say that we aren't able to turn the page and do something a little different? But if we go out to San Francisco, we get blew out, 36-9. I don't know how you go forward believing that the Lions are a legit contender.
I agree with you. Normally we're not opening a show with the Lions, but this is fascinating because we have a diehard Lions fan from the Detroit area here with us for the first hour. And I'll tell you this, even in the middle of Chiefs Kingdom, Malcolm, most of the conversations that have spilled through Championship Sunday have been about what the Lions did late in that game. I think it's a very interesting look at the way football's changing. You have Dan Campbell, who's just not going to change the way he does things in a situation where probably a field goal made more sense, but that's what got him there. That's how they roll. And I said yesterday, it didn't bother me so much to do that. Their players made some really key mistakes and didn't come up with plays when they had the opportunity to. But, holistically, that's a tough way to go. That's a game you absolutely have to win, and they didn't get it done. So, are you wavering in any confidence in Dan Campbell or anything else? I can't believe people are, but I think there are some that are. I don't know how you get to this point and not believe in the guy that got you there, but I think there's a group of people that think that, he just doesn't know enough about what he's doing to be in that spot.
Yeah, I think those folks are a little crazy. Like you said, it's easy to, after the game, to point at a couple things and say, that's the reason you lost, or this is the reason you lost. But there were so many, if you really sat and watched their game, there were a lot of things that went wrong for us once that second half kicked off, that I think is not Dan Campbell's fault. But like you said, Dan Campbell's decision-making and his willingness to go for it in these kind of unconventional situations are what got us here. There are a lot of games when you look back at our regular season, there were games where the difference between us going for a touchdown here and getting it versus a field goal might have saved us later in the game. So I think that you got to look at it from a holistic picture. Of course, as a Lions fan, I'm able to say that confidently. But, Dan Campbell isn't going anywhere. Brad Holmes, GM, they're not going anywhere. I think Lions fans right now, we're excited about the draft. We've been crushing the draft the last 3 years. So I think if you ask most Lions fans now that the kind of the effect of the game has worn off, they'll say like we're ready. Like this is we're getting used to the playoffs. We're getting used to Ford Field rocking in January, playing some good ball. So I think if you ask most Lions fans, we're feeling good right now.
Yeah, look, they'll be back. I wasn't all in on them at the beginning of the year.
Oh, I remember.
I thought it was just a little much on some of the it's not that I don't like them. It's not that I don't believe in what they're doing. I absolutely do. I just didn't think they were ready for this spot yet. Clearly they were.
Mm.
And I do think that I think that they're built in a way to get back. I said yesterday, I think they're a good off season away from maybe being the favorite in the NFC. San Francisco will be right there again next year, but there's no reason Detroit, with a couple of sound, free agent decisions and a good draft, can't elevate themselves over the other teams right now in the NFC. I don't think. I don't know what you look at on that team and don't think is like long-term good. The offensive line is long-term good. The backfield is long-term good. Jared Goff is fine. The wide receivers are long-term good. They need some horses on defense.
Oh, yeah.
And you can get that. You can solve that. We've seen teams do it time and time again. I love it though, the conversation, because I'm not analytics bro, right? Like I I very much like when coaches go with the flow of the game and kind of like go old school a little bit. Like Brandon Staley drives me nuts when he just will stick to the book. And Dan Campbell's this interesting phenomenon, because I believe that the analytics said take the field goal there, but it almost always says like go for it and be aggressive. But here he is aggressive, and you've got the same nerds telling people to go for it all the time, telling him not to go for it all the time. Like, what do you want? Somebody to just sit down on an iPad and say, all right, guys, here's what the computer tells us to do. Like, those are AI people, right?
Exactly.
Like, I'm not an AI people. Like, I want to know what humans are thinking, not what computers are thinking. Like, what's the flow of that game? So for me, Dan Campbell's awesome. Like, I love it. I love that in his gut, he was like, guy, we got to go for it here. We're not going to win this game. And it didn't work out for him. That's fine. And I do think there are bad decisions. I think that one was probably not the right one, but I don't have a problem with making it. Bill
Right.
Belichick is one of the most aggressive coaches we've ever seen. Andy Reid is one of the most aggressive coaches we've ever seen, right? Like but it doesn't mean that you have to always do this, what you don't have to like stick to some plan. I thought that was a bad one but in general, I like that Campbell goes for a feel. I think he uses, statistics and numbers to help drive his decisions, but ultimately he let his football instincts drive that decision. I got to tell you, his football instincts have been pretty dang good. He just had Detroit in Detroit in the NFC Championship game. I mean, that's as wild as you can think of in football.
Yeah,
And
man.
they're there. And a lot of it has to do with them buying into him.
Absolutely.
And look, they didn't make some plays when they needed to make them. I remember 2 critical drops on passes that had to be caught. That's not Dan Campbell's fault,
Yeah.
right? I love it. I think it's a great story. I love it for your city. The environments are awesome. I think for folks around here, it is reminiscent of 2018 or so, when it just felt like it was never going to happen. And then it does. I'm a Texas Rangers fan. That's how it felt to me in 2010 and 2011. Like what you've sat and watched your literal entire life, and you're just like, it's never going to happen. And you start to get there. Here's what I'll warn you about as a Texas Rangers fan, though. 2010 and 11 happened. You're like, all right, we're there. We're going to contend. It was 12 years later when they finally got it done. So don't take for granted that you got there, Malcolm, because it may be a while, right? You don't have, I love the roster. I love all that stuff, but you don't have Mahomes, right? It's a little different that trying to get there again. Just ask the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I think we're in a unique position, unlike a lot of the top contenders in the NFC, where, like you said, a lot of our young and our production is coming from rookies, guys on rookie deals. So I think we can plug in a few holes there, and I just want to contend, man. I want to be one of those guys where it's like, do we really want to go to Detroit? Like, where that's not something you look on your schedule and you're like, okay, that's a win. So I think now we've gotten over that threshold, and we can start believing that we'll be in those situations. And I think those situations come again. We'll know what to do in those situations. But definitely those drops, specifically by Reynolds, man, those hurt. Like those were some gut punches. But say it's a game of a few plays that can ultimately decide the outcome. And that's what you have to be okay with. And I think that's the beauty of having a coach like Dan Campbell who's played in the league, where he knows momentum swings and he knows how those things can affect the ball game. So I would have loved for him to kick the field goal at the end there. It would have at
It
least
wouldn't
given
have
us a fight.
guaranteed a win.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's the thing.
Our defense couldn't
I
stop a nosebleed at that point. So
Yeah, it's and this all again, like I feel like out of championship weekend, even with the Chiefs and Taylor Swift, most people I was talking to yesterday, it was the Dan Campbell discussion, which also speaks to, and I think that's a good thing because it speaks to how relevant he had them and he is. That's the best thing that could happen to the Detroit Lions franchise. So that's really cool too. I contended yesterday, you may disagree with this. I think that the Chiefs would have beaten the Lions in the Super Bowl. I think they would have. I think that would have been pretty advantageous for the Chiefs. I'm not so sure about the 49ers. And that doesn't mean it's like a guaranteed thing or anything else, but I do think that would have been a better matchup for the Chiefs than the 49ers will be. So, for Chiefs fans, I think it would have been better to see the Lions close that deal. The easy revenge factor from week one, everything comes full circle, right? That would have been something. Now we have this other situation with the 49ers who are there, who are supposed to be there, who have been really good most of the year. And it will be interesting to break down. Let's begin to do that in our next segment, Malcolm. And we'll have Dan Israel top of the next hour of the Chiefs Radio Network. But there's a key injury again in this game that's the Niners are favored now. I'm not sure what's going to happen over the next 10 days or so before we get to the Super Bowl. I guess 13 days, 12 days. But there's a big time, devastating injury blow we hear about yesterday. We'll get into that. We'll have some college hoops talk today as well. We'll give away a little HTO. Lots to come here on this Tuesday edition of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Malcolm Carter here with you. Jad Chambers producing. We'll be right back.
KFH.
Kansas State men's basketball broadcast available live for free right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH on the Odyssey app and on the Odyssey app. Tune into KFH tonight for Wildcat basketball or simply download the Odyssey app. Search KFH at 7 o'clock. Tune in an hour early at 6 for this week's Chiefs Kingdom show. Lots of good stuff coming for you tonight on KFH and on the Odyssey app. Welcome back in, everybody. Jacob Albracht, Malcolm Carter here with you on this Tuesday. All right, Malcolm, we set up there your Lions, gave you a chance to appropriately vent. Now it means the Chiefs get to take on the 49ers. And the 49ers, when healthy, are really good. We saw that in the second half. We saw what they're capable of. As we begin to dissect this game, we now learned yesterday the Chiefs are going to have to play it without Amenahue, who had the big, strip sack on Lamar Jackson in that game. He has been incredible for the Chiefs since he joined the team. This is a big-time loss for Kansas City, and one that there's not really replacement value on it, but that's a big thing against the Chiefs in this game to lose a player like that the way he's been playing lately, and really the whole time he's been active all year.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, especially when you're talking about getting pressure on Brock Purdy. You saw in a couple situations, the Lions were able to get some balls batted down, force a turnover as well. So that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge. You want Brock Purdy to get a little rattled back there. You don't want him to have too much time to deliver some of those balls downfield to his receivers. So that's a huge blow. And I saw that. I was like, eesh. And he played for the 49ers too. So it was a little bit of that, back playing against your old team. You would have been juiced up. So that's a tough one.
Frank Clark rumors swirl immediately. It makes sense. I don't know what he's doing right now. He has been big for the Chiefs in, playoffs past. He was big in the Super Bowl win against against the 49ers. So I would entertain it, certainly. It feels like a big spot for Felix Anudike-Uzomah to step up. We know Karlaftis has been good. Can those guys both just play the majority of the snaps there together? Maybe this is a big opportunity then potentially for him. I don't know how. You don't really just fix it. You just have to adjust everything, really. And the reality is, I think San Francisco really wants to run the ball. Baltimore should have. It's criminal that Baltimore ran it as little as they did. I will never understand why they did that. But San Francisco is not going to make that mistake.
Right.
I don't know why Baltimore did it. If Baltimore had a 3-and-out and allowed a touchdown and then totally abandoned a game plan because of that, I guess shame on them, but I don't believe that. I don't know that it was ever their intent to line up and run it like that. I can't figure out why, because they did that the week before against one of the best run defenses in football, right? And then they don't do it against one of the worst run defenses in football. Again, that's by yard per carry average when we talk about the Chiefs. The Niners want to run the ball against the Lions, one of the better run defenses in football, and they do. And they're going to against the Chiefs. So maybe it's not as big a factor as you lose that in your pass rush. But we'll watch Willie Gay's injury. He needs to be there for the Chiefs. I know Drew Tranquil's been incredible. He has been. It would be really nice to have both of those guys when you're talking about one of the better run game callers that there is in football. If you listen to football people talk about Kyle Shanahan, one of the best things he does and has done over his career is the way he designs the run game. It doesn't matter, even before they had Christian McCaffrey, they'd have 3 or 4 guys. They ran the crap out of the ball. We all think about Debo and Kittle and Ayuk, and those guys are awesome, right? Running the ball is the bread and butter of a Kyle Shanahan offense. Now they just happen to have the best in the business back there doing it for him. So that's where it all starts. And the Chiefs on the injury front over these next couple of weeks are going to be really interesting to watch because they're the team right now with, nicked up safeties and nicked up middle linebackers and now a defensive lineman down. They're going to have to figure out a way to stop the run in this game because San Francisco will not make the same mistake Baltimore did and not run the ball. They are going to run the ball. I'll be stunned if McCaffrey doesn't touch the ball 25 plus times in this game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. McCaffrey's to me, it's gonna have to go. It's gonna have to start and stop with him. The way this Chief secondary has been playing as of recently, I mean, it's been pretty lights out. So I definitely got to tip my cap there.
It's been the best in football all year when you talk about just coverage guys.
Yeah, man, they've been balling out. So and like you said, San Francisco knows that. And so I think Lions, we had probably the best run defense in the NFL in terms of like giving up yardage to running backs. So I think definitely. But what I do think that Detroit showed were some of the weaknesses in San Francisco's defense. And I definitely think that the Chiefs will be watching some of that tape to maybe get a few nuggets. Because we ran the ball very well, very well. Obviously, the game plan changed for us a little bit there, but I think they'll be able to kind of pick some of those pieces off of the 49ers defense. And Pacheco should have a good game too.
Yeah, that'll be the interesting thing. The Lions had success running the ball, I thought, early. And they did it with Montgomery, who, is kind of similar to Pacheco in the fact that he's going to get downhill quickly. And that's what Pacheco does. I think there's a part of me that thinks Kansas City will try to attack the San Francisco secondary. So for a long time, I've been an advocate of the Chiefs playing this style of letting their defense go, running the ball a ton, taking field goals. And I still think that that's what they need to do. But what will be interesting with 2 weeks is just how much gadget stuff Andy Reid cooks up here. For a while in this season, the receivers weren't capable of doing some of that kind of stuff he likes to do. But we have seen, some of them make bigger plays here down the stretch that makes me just wonder a little bit if he's going to be tempted to do some of that kind of stuff in this game. And maybe they need to. Because I do think you want to attack San Francisco that way, right? Like I do think you want to try to get after them and not let them just load out for the run. I mean, when you've got Warner there at linebacker, like you got to keep him guessing a little bit.
That's the tough one.
Because he's one of the best of this generation at that position, and they've got 2 of them. Right. Although I don't know, did Greenlaw I know he left the field. I need to check on his injury status, but they're awesome in the middle of that defense. As good as there is in football, as good as the Chiefs, and the Chiefs have been awesome there this year. So, and Kelsey will help that. Obviously you can't load up on the run when you got to worry about Kelsey trickling out, sneaking out and doing his thing. I would venture to guess this is a big Kelsey game. I would venture to guess that, it's going to try to be a Pacheco game, but you may see a little bit more from the wide receiver position than we have, because I do think San Francisco's slightly vulnerable there and can be attacked that way a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you go back to the first touchdown we've had where J-Mo caught that end around and took it to the house, you're going to have to get creative, like some of those pin and pulls.
But you got to be careful because that screwed the Chiefs this year when those guys have made mistakes, and that they cannot. I mean, you can't do that either. Like at some point,
you can't play scared ball either, though. You can't play scared out there, especially in the Super Bowl.
But it's not as much because I agree with that. But like it really comes down to like if we think the Ravens are the best team in football, and I think most people did, and the Ravens smashed San Francisco, by the way. Then you feel like you probably don't need to change anything, right? Like we just took them down at their place doing what we do. We don't need to get cute here. Let's run the ball. Let's take our shots and let's play great defense. I do think you can still do that against San Francisco. What will get very interesting again, though, is I cannot imagine there's anything that will make San Francisco abandon the run. I think the biggest difference between them and Baltimore is, when you're talking about Baltimore abandoning the run, which they did, they never really tried. they don't have Christian McCaffrey back there. No matter what happens, Christian McCaffrey's getting touches. If they're down 30 points, Christian McCaffrey's getting touches. So it's not like you can just get an early lead and say, all right, we don't have to worry about Christian McCaffrey anymore. Like you could say, all right, we don't have to worry about Gus Edwards anymore. Not the same thing, right? You're talking about the best in the business, and they'll find ways to get him the ball no matter what. Yeah. And they got lots of those guys. I think if this were normal circumstances and the Chiefs weren't the Chiefs and Mahomes wasn't who he was, like you'd see, like just on paper, this would be more than a 1.5 point game. The Niners would be favored by more than that.
Right.
And I know all the money, I said this yesterday, all the money's going to go to the Chiefs. I won't be surprised if this is a pick 'em where the Chiefs are like a 1 point favorite by the time this game's played, because they wouldn't do it before and they don't want to get burned twice. And what I've been saying for 6 months is when you've got that defense in Mahomes and Kelsey, you just don't bet against them. Mm-hmm. The betting public is not going to bet against them for the most part. I don't think, again, this time. So I think that's a little deceptive. I think on paper, this game favors the 49ers. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
But I don't know and I don't think I'm going to pick it that way because of the same thing. Again, I've been saying forever. However, you still have Mahomes, Kelsey. Now Rashee Rice, I think you can put in there too. I mean, the Chiefs they're not dynamic offensively anymore. They're just really good at what they can do, right? Pacheco's really good at what he does. Rice and Kelsey are really good at what they do. Mahomes is obviously Mahomes. And then you have the best defense in football. But that's pretty much it, right? Like there's not much behind that. And San Francisco's that way to some degree too. They just have a little more of it. But I do think on paper, this for sure favors the 49ers. Yeah. But I'll bet you nobody bets it that way because of Mahomes. And they shouldn't either. I don't know how you'd ever bet against Mahomes as an underdog. I mean, you talk about statistics and all that kind of stuff. That does not favor the opposition when he's an underdog.
Hey man, scare money does not make money. I know I'll probably will be of the minority here when it comes to that, but I think the 49ers I think they feel like they have you guys' number. They let us slip away a couple years ago from a couple of big plays, but I mean, for what I saw from them in that second half, you give them any light. I mean, just similar to how the Chiefs are. They can smell blood.
And Chiefs defense is about 10 times better than the Lions defense, though.
Yeah, that's good and all, but it's any given Sunday. And given how the 49ers are able to run the ball effectively, especially against a front that's now a little bit weaker, those are rooms for concern.
There's concern if the Chiefs are fully healthy because you have a team and a philosophy, and you had this with the Ravens, which is, again, I just cannot figure out what the Ravens were doing not running the ball. I mean, their backs had like 6 carries in that game. Mm-hmm. That is criminal when you think about what because the game was never, what was the biggest lead? 10 points at any point? Like, it was never out of hand. Mm-hmm. There's no reason that Baltimore shouldn't have been running the ball. San Francisco will run the ball. And they will run the screen game, which the Chiefs struggle with. We're basically just the running back, right? The running backs hurt the Chiefs. It's not a fatal flaw, obviously. And they're so good in the secondary that it's a natural progression of things for a team to attack them that way because you're just not going to get anything through the air. Their corners are too good this year. It is the chess match on this one will be interesting. You're right. The Chiefs scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to win the last one.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan, like you want to talk about the wrong kind of legacy. Imagine if Kyle Shanahan loses this one now, and then it's can't win the big game. It'll be like Andy Reid, but you're right. But back in the day, that was the knock on Andy Reid for a long time.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy better not make mistakes. Brock Purdy better play clean. Because if he doesn't play clean, they're in big trouble. If he plays like he played against Detroit in the first half, they'll lose the game. It will be I will be pretty surprised if Purdy throws it more than, let's say, how many times did he throw it against the Lions? But they were behind. Even then, I wonder, let me look here at how many times he threw the ball. I will say right now that I bet he doesn't throw it more than, let's call it 26 times. He threw it 31 times against the Lions. I bet he didn't throw it more than 26 times. And I bet you McCaffrey has 20-plus carries and 25. Okay. McCaffrey will have more touches than Purdy will have pass attempts. How's that for a bold prediction for you?
That's pretty bold, man. That's pretty bold, man.
Is it? McCaffrey had 24 touches in the last game, and Purdy threw it 31 times, and they were behind big in that game.
I think 26 is a little low, only because I've seen what they've been able to do with juice check out the backfield. I think they're getting creative when it comes to getting some of those short to intermediate throws for Brock. So I think he'll creep over 26 slightly though.
They got to play behind for that to happen. I mean, obviously that if they get down big, it's going to throw that out the window. I just don't think that's going to happen either. I don't think that the Chiefs will want to play this game that way. I mean, obviously you want to get out to it, but when you're not good against the run, you want to get out to a big lead quickly. I don't know where I'm going to land with this game. I'm going to need until next Sunday. Like I need a full injury report update. Yeah. I need all of this stuff because I do think this is a really bad matchup for the Chiefs. But the Ravens were too, right? And I liked them against the Ravens. And that had everything to do, unfortunately, for Lamar Jackson with the quarterbacks. And Lamar Jackson didn't play poorly. He did miss a couple of plays. But sometimes in the NFL, I do think you can simplify things when you have great teams and you bet on the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And so, unfortunately, for every other quarterback in football, quite frankly, you always bet on Mahomes in these spots. I mean, what he and Kelsey have done in the history of football is as impressive as anything we have ever seen. Ever.
Yeah.
Right? And so when it comes down to it, when you have two good teams, even in a bad matchup, when you've got the greatest tight end of all time and you have maybe the greatest quarterback of all time and one of the great coaches of all time, and you hand that group arguably the best defense in football, I just can't bet against that. I don't think. Now, we'll see on the injuries. Rick points out on our video stream that Amenahue wasn't there for the first 6 games. Right, Rick. We pointed that out. Since he's been there, he's been incredible. He hasn't been there the whole time. But there is no question his loss is a big one. Like, he has been unreal for them this year. Such a revelation on that defense. They've also been a next man up defense all year long and been just fine. They've had injuries to Willie Gay. They've had significant injuries all year on the defensive side. They've overcome them. But, man, Chris Jones is hobbled. We know that. We can see it, right? Amenahue's out. Willie Gay is nicked up. Edwards is nicked up. Like, I'm glad there's a week off for the Chiefs because they need it. They got to get rested up for this game because they're going to be not at full strength, I don't think.
No, I don't believe they will either. But like I said, a lot of that stuff is going to come down to I think 49ers' ability to stay above the chains. You saw a lot of times the Ravens, they got into those 1st and 15, those obvious passing situations. And that's like against that Chiefs defense, that's the one thing you cannot do. 2nd and 14, 1st and 15, those are terrible situations to be in, and they thrive off.
That stops you from running the ball.
Man, so that's what I'll be looking for mostly, because that 49ers, while they run the ball effectively, they're passing where they rank passing. I mean, they're trending towards the bottom of the league when it comes to pass protection for Brock. So I think Chiefs will have to make it their game, which obviously is the name of the game, and we're talking about the Super Bowl here. But there's a couple of things that they'll need to go right in their favor, I think, in my opinion.
Well, you got Mahomes, right? And that's the thing. You've got those guys. If that game is moderately close going into the 4th quarter, you're sweating bullets if you're San Francisco. Because that's where push comes to shove, they make all the big plays. Mm-hmm. And right now, Kelsey's all the way back, making incredible plays, making strategic mental plays on the Ravens, getting in their heads. I mean, you just a masterclass in trash talk and its effectiveness in the field of play in that game against the Ravens. He was rent-free up there.
Yeah, I love different trash.
I did too. I mean, if you've ever been out there and you are a trash talker, I am. I know that will surprise some people. Like, that's what you're going for, right? Like, it's mental warfare. And, man, he just absolutely dominated the Ravens on that side. It was so fun to watch. All right, let's give away some HTO on the way out. We'll give away a free iced tea and a free coffee. More than 25 flavors of iced tea for you, sweet and unsweet. Get in and check it out. That is available for you at the Wichita West, East, and Derby location. And then we'll get you a free Brewhouse coffee as well. Those are available at the Wichita, East, and Derby locations. Good luck, everybody. First caller to the KFH hotline, 869-1240, will win that prize. We'll come back. We'll talk a little college hoops before we get into more Chiefs talk with Dan Israel, the executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. Sports Daily coming right back. All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. We've got K-State hoops tonight. KU and Wichita State play later this week. Malcolm, the Shockers, we talked last week, and then it got worse for them. And then and that was sort of a rock bottom moment, you hope, right? Because it had every opportunity to be that, and you hope that it's rock bottom and now coming back up and not rock bottom and then just lives there. Well, they respond with the big win over SMU after a really bad loss at home to ECU. So now it's, can you follow that up for Wichita State? Can you build on that? Can you get back to the point we saw early this season where it's like, yeah, I can see it for this team. It spiraled out of control on them. It was a tough schedule to open up, but it doesn't honestly get that much easier. It looks like the league is, ahead of them right now, but we'll see. We'll see what can stick here as far as that goes. But beating SMU at home is really, really nice. But you got to follow it up. You have to follow that up now.
Yeah, I agree, man. But I saw some of the things that we talked about last week from Wichita State. And one of the key things that I've loved is they're really running a lot of the offense through Harland. You saw at the beginning of the year, it was a lot of Xavier Bell kind of ball dominant type of flow of the game, but now they're letting a few different ball handlers get a touch at it. They're not as predictable as they were before. And I knew that they had to kind of hit that valley of lows and figure out what actually works for this team specifically, that we have. Not worried about what's to come in the future, what's focused on right now. I think they are a talented enough team that they can squeeze out a couple of these conference games and at least go into the offseason with some type of momentum. So I was even at the last home game, and it was a pretty ugly game. I'm not gonna lie. East Carolina, that was as ugly as the game is gonna get.
We need that to be rock bottom.
Yeah.
Right. That needs to be the worst that we see. It has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be.
It can't get worse than that.
And the timing on playing SMU and playing maybe your best game of the season at the literal same time the Chiefs are playing is kind of unfortunate. But we talked about it a little bit yesterday. You got to go win in Tulsa. And then you get to come home and play Memphis in front of the biggest basketball audience there is on the CBS Saturday afternoon game, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's and you get a stretch here of, ESPNU. It's a national televised game. You looked good on ESPN2. You won't have a bigger stage than CBS. Memphis is much better at home. They are on the road, but you got to overcome that. It's time now. Go get a win that nobody expects you to get, right? And I know Memphis got them badly at Coke Arena, but it wasn't bad until the second half.
Right.
They scored 112 points on you. That's a starting point, I would say. But you can't overlook Tulsa because you can't beat SMU and then not take advantage of that and follow it up with a nice road win for the first time this year. Like, you can't then just go lose to Tulsa, right? You have to now go win that game. And I know it's a road conference game, but this is Wichita State basketball. And Tulsa's not very good either.
They're not.
Go beat Tulsa on the road, right? I think it would be hard to imagine, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Tulsa basketball because I'm not. It's hard for me to imagine Tulsa is more talented than Wichita State. I don't think that they are, right? So go beat them at their place. Follow it up with a big win. I think that's important for this team to be able to do that. Don't lose the momentum of finally breaking whatever the funk was and getting that win over SMU. Go get a big road win, because if you lose that game and then you got to go to Memphis and play there, who knows? Right now, you're right back to where you started again. Got to win that game against Tulsa.
Yeah, I don't think you can go into every week kind of expecting, well, maybe we'll win, maybe we won't, and it's just kind of just going with the ebbs and flows of the season. I agree. I think this is the part of the season where they have to take control of their circumstances, and I think they'll do that. I really do. I had a lot of faith in Paul Mills coming into the year. I really believe in him as a head coach. He just seems to have that kind of that aura, and when you watch him on the sideline, he's getting into those guys, man. But he keeps the relatively same demeanor, and I think that's important for those guys over at Wichita State, man. Especially because a lot of them, this is their first year in the program. So I'm looking forward to this game. I really think Wichita State is going to come out to Tulsa and probably put on their best performance.
That would be the good time for it, right? I mean, and look, it will take a best performance to beat Memphis, but I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Wichita State needs to go to Memphis and beat the Tigers. Like, we can also be realistic.
Yeah.
So, but going to Tulsa and winning, like East Carolina felt like a must-win game. This is as must-win as a road conference game is going to get. Like, it is, you must win it, right? Like, you must, or it's just, you got to give people hope that this isn't a bottom tier team in the American Athletic Conference, and doing that those are the things you got to do. And they responded to the pressure well against SMU. We'll see. That'll be a fun one. K-State tonight, Malcolm. Just an absolutely brutal schedule last week for them. They're sort of in a similar situation. You don't want to let that snowball on you if you're K-State, because we know in the Big 12, like, the schedule is never easy. But now all of a sudden, they're in a tie for fourth. It's never going to get easy, but you had to go to Ames in Houston. Now you go, you host Oklahoma tonight, and then you go to Stillwater to play Oklahoma State, who's the worst team in the league. They need to pick up 2 wins this week also if they're going to try to still contend in the Big 12.
It's going to be a big month for basketball.
I love it. God, I love this time of year with college hoops. Okay, we'll get into KU a little bit more before they play tomorrow. K-State's the team in action tonight. More on that a little bit in the second hour. We'll come back. Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, joins us here on Sports Daily. Don't go away. We'll have a lot to get to with Dan when we return.
Mornings with Bob and Tom on 97.5 and 1240 KFH, Wichita's most listened to sports radio. Always live on the free Odyssey app.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now.
800-583-5795.
Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. There is zero risk to you. If we can't reduce your tax debt, then you pay nothing. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have a 5-star rating on Google and Yelp and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com
or call 800-583-5795. That's 800-583-5795.
Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
A beautiful start to our Tuesday morning with clear skies and temps currently in the upper 30s.
Weather brought to you by Daily Harvest. Daily Harvest makes it easy to stick to your goals with food delivered right to your door. Visit daily-harvest.com and use code HARVEST for up to $65 off your first box.
Electrical problems can be shocking. Call the experts at Mr. Electric and experience unmatched professionalism from start to finish. Call ahead scheduling. No surprises with upfront pricing. Complimentary safety check with every appointment and 24/7 emergency electrical service. The Mr. Electric expert staff is focused on your safety with a job done right every time. Residential or commercial, Mr. Electric has the power to make things better. Call now, 316-361-5200. Online at MrElectricWichita.com. It's that time again, the legendary Rocks Dugout Sports Card and Sports Memorabilia Show. This Sunday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Bolero North Rock. Free admission. Over 50 tables with local and regional dealers. Vendors with sports cards and memorabilia. Buy, sell, trade. Now is your chance to find cheap sports memorabilia and all your other favorite teams. Rocks Dugout Sports Card and Memorabilia Show. This Sunday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Bolero North Rock. 3232 North Rock Road. Happy holidays from Rocks Dugout.
My 13-year-old acts like a puppy again. Almost overnight, she's a different dog.
Perfect poops. When people switch their dog's poop to the farmer's dog, the effects can seem like magic. But there's no magic involved. It's simply real meat and vegetables with all the nutrients dogs need, instead of highly processed pellets. No tricks, just smarter, healthier pet food delivered in packs portioned for your dog. It's amazing what real food can do. Get 50% off your first order at thefarmersdog.com/no-magic.
Have you heard of Nepo billionaires? Celebrity kids inheriting untold billions? Take Jay-Z and Beyonce, who are handing down over $1 billion to their kids. much of it in their blue chip art collection. That's right, for the richest families in the world, fine art is a vehicle for transferring and growing their wealth. And for the first time, everyday investors can invest like billionaires themselves in this potentially lucrative asset class, all thanks to Masterworks. With this platform, you don't need to be an art expert, and you can still invest in blue chip artists like Banksy and Picasso. Oh, and you don't need to be a billionaire either. Schedule a call with Masterworks advisors by going to masterworks.com/cake. That's masterworks.com/cake. This advertisement relates to the provision of advisory services by Masterworks Advisors, LLC, and is not intended to offer or solicit investment in any securities. Masterworks Advisors is affiliated with Masterworks.
Tired of that constant dripping? Superior Plumbing is here to help. Our parts department stocks only genuine top quality parts for repairs that last. Brands like Kohler, Delta, and American Standard faucets, water heaters, toilets, and more. Whether you're a trade professional or a DIYer, we have licensed plumbers on hand to help.
Superior Plumbing will come running because we care to treat you fair and square. And our name says it all superior.
The KF8 Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
College men's basketball tonight in Lawrence. It's 8th-ranked Kansas hosting Oklahoma State. KU has won 15 straight games on home court. They've beaten the Cowboys 6 times in a row. KU is tied for 4th place in the Big 12 Conference right now. Jayhawks are a 16.5-point favorite going into this one tonight. 8th-ranked Kansas hosting Oklahoma State. Will tip off at 8 o'clock tonight, nationally televised on ESPN. Pro basketball in the NBA last night. The Houston Rockets win at home with the Los Angeles Lakers, 135-119. Starting at guard for the Rockets, former Wichita State Shocker Fred VanVleet with 14 assists. Fred is 6th right now in the NBA, averaging 8.5 assists per game, and he had 14 last night. The Rockets have won 2 of their last 3. The Rockets are 1 game behind right now for playoff spot. And a happy birthday to KU football legend Nolan Cromwell, 69 today. I'm Ted, the Sports Head.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Caught! Touchdown! Kansas City!
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom, we have you covered. Joining Sports Daily Live, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, Dan Israel.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Malcolm Carter hanging with you. And we are joined right now by Dan Israel, fresh back from a trip to Baltimore. Dan, here we go again. You ready for Vegas? You indulge in some of the festivities out there in Las Vegas? You excited about this one?
Yeah, personally, I'm not a big Vegas person, but I'm a big Super Bowl person. So, yeah, going to have a lot of fun.
There you go.
You know, look, it's hard work, but, I mean, man, this is some special time we're living in.
I got to ask you right off the top here, Dan, because I cannot figure this out for the life of me. Why on earth did Baltimore not run the ball in that game? They ran it 43 times against one of the best run defenses in football. They ran it in total like 15 times and only 6 from the running backs in that game against the Chiefs. It was a close, low-scoring game. I cannot figure out what on earth they were thinking.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is a situation, Jacob, where I think they panicked a little. You know, they haven't been there. They haven't done this game before, and this is where experience matters. I think had they had the experience behind them, they would have said, look, we're only down by 10 points, and we got 3 quarters to get there. You know, or we got a half to get there. We don't need to change who we are. We need to stay who we are. Instead, they were playing from behind, which was the first time, and I don't know if it's the first time they had it all season, but it was rare for them. And I think against the Chiefs, they feared that if they didn't catch up, that they wouldn't be able to return to who they are. And the problem with that is that they spent all day doing that. You know, at some point you got to say, well, okay, the Chiefs are porous on the run. Why not just let them, you know, Why not just test that? We know that they have the best secondary, or one of the best secondaries in the league. They have a great defensive line. They're going to pressure us. They're going to defend us. So why not just stay who we are and get there? But I agree. I feel like, it's a question. If I were a Ravens fan, it's a question I would be demanding an answer for sure.
What's going on, Dan? I'm going to ask you here to kind of put on your Spags helmet. Going into this matchup with the 49ers, what do you feel like are some of the keys defensively for, kind of matching up with all of these different offensive weapons that the 49ers have?
Yeah, the 49ers are definitely tough. I do think, I got asked pretty much all week, certainly after the game on Sunday, was, who do you want to play? Do you want to play the Lions? Do you want to play the 49ers? And I think it comes down to one thing. I think Steve Spagnuolo will have an easier time tricking Purdy than he would have Goff. Goff's just got enough experience behind him. I think he's going to recognize some of those defenses, calls and the defensive shifts a little bit better than Purdy. Purdy's still playing very well. I'm not trying to diminish him, but with only a couple of years in the league, never having been to the game, it's a different level. I tell people all the time, if the NFL season is a high-rise office building, the regular season is played on floors, 1 through 10. Then you get into the wild card round, that's played on floor 11. And then you get the divisional round, that's played on floor 12. Then you get to the AFC Championship, that is played on floor 20. And then you get to the Super Bowl, and that's played on floor 110. It's such a huge step. And so while many of the 49ers, Deebo Samuel, there's a number of them that were there in 2019 when we defeated them. I'm sure they feel like there's unfinished business from the standpoint of the quarterback alone who touches the ball every single play. I feel like we have an advantage for Spagnuolo to trick Purdy a little bit easier than he probably would have with Goff. So to me, that's kind of a key matchup to look for.
Dan, so when this game is fascinating because Kyle Shanahan will get Christian McCaffrey touches whether they're ahead by 30 or behind by 30. I said this, and I'm going to stick with this. I think McCaffrey may have more touches in this game than Brock Purdy has pass attempts. Like San Francisco, I mean, it's as obvious or more than it was with the Ravens. Like you've got to attack the Chiefs where they've been able to be attacked because they're too good in other places defensively, even with some of these really concerning injuries, which we'll ask you about in a minute. Like that's the only ticket against this defense.
Yeah, and I think Christian McCaffrey is one of the best running backs in the National Football League, not just the NFC, the National Football League. And so I think if they've learned anything from watching our game against the Baltimore Ravens, it would be just that. Yeah, let's not abandon that. Let's go after that. Let's see. We know testing the other. We know what that result's going to be. Although I think Deebo Samuel is probably a better receiver than Zay Flowers or any of the Odell Beckham Jr. He hasn't been anything for the Ravens this year. And he wasn't much in that game either. I think what do you have 2 catches maybe? So I feel like for the 49ers, if you're Shanahan, you're saying, well, where are our possibilities to exploit something that we didn't see in the Ravens game? It's the running game, and you have such a good running back. If they don't give him the football, then that's going to be gross incompetence.
I would, I know that in 2019, these teams were a lot different, especially when you're talking about on the offensive side for both sides of the ball. But Jacob talked about it earlier, trying to mix in Kelsey, and there is no Tyreek Hill, there is no Sammy Watkins, who thrived a lot in that first Super Bowl matchup. So are you have those same sentiments? Do you feel like this is going to have to be like a Travis Kelce legacy game for the Chiefs to pull it out? Or do you see maybe a different style of game where maybe Kelce does not get in those 11, 12 targets and someone else is maybe getting the lion's share?
Well, I think 2 things, first, Kelce, if he draws the fire, then I think he's doing a job, so whether or not he's actually catching the football, he needs to have a good game. He needs to run the right routes. He needs to, he needs to chip the right amount. He needs to play the way the play is, or he needs to perform the way the play is designed. If he does that, whether or not he's the guy actually catching or or, I think is less important than just his overall performance of being what the team needs. Sometimes you're the decoy, right? I mean, that's just all there is to it. I think Rashee Rice has proven that he's rising to the level of a number one receiver. He had some contested catches in the game against the Baltimore Ravens that I thought were outstanding. Heck, I even got to, I guess I got to give props to Marquez Valdez-Scantling as well. Our new name for him, by the way, is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But I feel like he's arrived at playoff form, which he did last year too. I don't know if it's enough to forgive all the sins of the regular season, but he had an unbelievable catch in this game against Baltimore that while it wasn't graceful, he held on to the football. He did his job. He got done what he needed to do. And I think those kinds of things, especially with MVS and with Rice, your ability to stretch the defense and keep them honest, force them to play 40 yards of depth, not 20. You give any team 20. Look what happens when you get into the red zone, right? Where the field compresses. Defenses get so much more stingy. We don't want to give them that when you don't have to. And so I feel like those guys are really valuable. Kelsey, definitely the intermediate game. I think one of the best things they did against the Baltimore Ravens, and really have done it through the playoffs, they just can't turn the football over. And I think that's more key than Kelsey, say, having 75 yards and a touchdown.
It's interesting, too, when you think about San Francisco and as explosive and dynamic as they are offensively, that the Chiefs, the plan that I've laid out is to take those field goals when you have them. I think that's still in play. They had one opportunity they didn't take advantage of, and it was a coin flip at worst when they went for it there down near the goal line. But I think that's still in play, don't you, Dan, with the defense playing its way? You got to commit to taking the points when you can get the points and not being as aggressive as maybe Chiefs teams have been in the past.
Yeah, and I think, that was a little bit of I almost asked Coach after the game, why he decided to go for it. But I do get where you're in a position in the field where you're not going to do yourself a lot of damage, and
right.
you want to keep the momentum and all that. But man, it's going to be a close game. Your defense is going to shut the other guy down. 3 points is a lot, right? Well, take the points. I think that was a fallacy that the Lions had too.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm here. My Lions. I'm
Malcolm's a big Lions fan.
Tender
Dan.
over here.
He's
you
from
guys.
Detroit.
Sorry,
dude. It is. I'll tell you what. That was a tough loss, man. What a storybook. I said I have some friends who are Detroit based, and I told them in the beginning of the year in August. I said, look, this Lions team, man, they won 8 of the last games. They're hot. I'm scared of them. I think it's going to be tough. I just, from a poetic nature, I wanted to play the Lions in the Super Bowl. I wanted to start the season with the Lions, and I wanted to finish the season with the Lions. But that was a tough one to lose, man.
Yeah, that's how it felt. I was at that first game at Arrowhead, so I definitely would have loved to see that rematch, but we lost. So I would love to hear your perspective. I've been seeing a lot of folks the past day or so talk about, like, wow, Brock Purdy can run the ball. And I think if you've watched 49ers play this year, he does have some athletic ability, which the Chiefs have been kind of susceptible to the past 2 weeks with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. So what do you kind of see from a defensive standpoint, being able to maybe limit some of those scrambles and kind of those drive extenders that Brock Purdy had, especially against us on Sunday?
Yeah, Malcolm, I think one of the interesting things here is, and let me first say, this is a Chiefs Kingdom guy, Iowa Hawkeye. I don't want to make it sound like I'm super down on Brock Purdy, because I do think he's a good quarterback, and I do think he deserves to be in this game. However, I don't think he's Patrick Mahomes. I frankly think if he scrambles to the degree that we saw Josh Allen or even Lamar Jackson, Jackson's fast and shifty. Allen's big. Purdy's neither of those. He's going to get hurt if he does that a lot. So I think having a designed run for him would be a mistake, especially when you've got a running back like Christian McCaffrey. The extending a play, I think, is where you really see his ability there. That has a dividend that I think they can take advantage of. However, you just can't do it enough, because I'm telling you, man, right now, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, they are playing so physical. And if he does that a lot, if he scrambles for 10 times a game, he could end up getting knocked out of that game, or at least getting, an injury that keeps him from being 100%. So I just think they should only rely on that when they have to. And if they've got any designed runs for him, that's crazy. I would not do that.
Dan, we got to get you mentioned some of the defensive linemen. So Menahue's out. Chris Jones is hobbled, clearly. Willie Gay couldn't play. Edwards is nicked up again. How many of these guys, we know Menahue won't play, but how many of these guys are going to be ready to roll, at full strength or close to it? Or how concerned are we about how many defensive injuries are plaguing the Chiefs right now?
Yeah, they're banged up. I think that's the danger in playing physical football is you end up beat up. And you can deliver a blow and you're going to take the less end of that, but you're still taking something. And so I feel like, a good example, I talked to George Karlaftis after the game and we were laughing and we started walking towards the bus and I'm like, you okay? Do you need me to carry you to the bus? Those guys left it on the field, man. Drew Tranquil, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, they were exhausted at the end of that thing. And so I feel like for Chris in particular, I believe, and you might want to fact check this, but I believe his $1 million bonus is if he appears in a Super Bowl. So just earning a Super Bowl berth, I don't think is enough. So I think Chris Jones is going to be active. I don't think you're going to be able to keep him out of this game.
Yeah.
The question is, though, how effective is he, right? There were a couple of times I wasn't sure he was going to get up on the field in Baltimore. I don't know whether it was his knee or whether he was just exhausted or both, but that's just inherently the problem with playing incredibly physical football. And we're thin there. Mike Dana's great, but Edwards is down. You got a Menahue out. The questions, it's a valid question, Jacob. I just feel like you get to this year and you're relatively healthy. That's an amazing feat because it is not easy to go a full season and come out healthy. And we all know what Super Bowl 55 was like, losing the two, offensive tackles. It makes a difference. And part of the success of that defense is predicated on that defensive line getting pressure on the quarterback, whether or not it's a sack, whether or not it's a fumble. It's changing that quarterback's timing. That is so important and so critical to what Steve Spagnuolo does that I just, you have to ask the question, what's that defensive line shape going to be like come Sunday? Now, the advantage is here. We got 2 weeks to rest, right? Which we all know. Players always tend to say that they don't feel like recovered or they still feel sore and ache until Thursday or maybe Friday morning. Well, in this situation, you have 2 weeks. They won't even start to practice really hard until next week. So I think that's an advantage for us to get healthy, but not going to be easy because I think San Francisco offensive line is pretty good too.
So a lot of folks on social media have been saying that, if Mahomes gets his third Super Bowl, he kind of solidifies himself up there as like top 2 or 3 quarterbacks of all time. Are you buying into like this being that sort of legacy third Super Bowl type of thing for Patrick Mahomes? Or do you think, there's many more to come from this? This one, if he loses this one, it's not necessarily the end of the world. He's still 2-2 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Malcolm, if you extrapolate Tom Brady at 28 years old and Patrick Mahomes at 28 years old, they're probably very close. There's some categories where Mahomes is actually going to lead Brady, probably some that Brady, would have been ahead of Mahomes in. But I think the fact that they're on such a parallel track, I think you do have to ask if this kid indeed plays as long as Tom Brady did, he has the potential to be the GOAT. I do think if they get to another Super Bowl and win it, it solidifies the whole dynasty aspect of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think you have to say this is something, it's not, well, maybe not unprecedented. 4 of the last 5, that's pretty amazing. I just from my own career feel like this is something that I could never have fathomed, never could have really dreamed. Could we go to a Super Bowl, maybe get 1 or 2 or 3? Possibly, but 4 out of the last 5 is, and the kid's young. Mahomes is 28 years old. It's to me, it's a valid question. I don't know that one game can delineate, him being the greatest of all time. But I think when you look at it from a progression standpoint and from their age in comparison, yeah, he's definitely in the discussion.
Dan, we'll get much more into the X's and O's of this matchup. We'll get more injury info and everything tomorrow. Next week because we get the week off. I do want to ask you, though, because it's a media circus. There has been a lot of chatter and a lot of smoke about whether Andy Reid and or Travis Kelce will be back next season. I've never really understood that because I can't imagine what these guys would be doing if they weren't playing football, let alone leaving at the top of their games. But where do you think that's coming from? And because it's coming up with everybody in the world there to ask questions next week. What is your take on all of that chatter? And have you heard anything like that around the building?
So I'll give you my 2 cents worth. And this is there's no factual basis for this other than what I see when I'm inside the building. I do not see Coach Reid saying or desiring to retire. I do not see Travis Kelce's desire to retire. I think what generates this is, I think if you were to ask Tammy Reid, is she ready for him to retire? The answer would be yes. He works very long hours. And I think, when you're at an age that the Reids are at, you want to enjoy your golden years, So I think if you ask Tammy Reid, and she's very competitive too, don't get me wrong. She likes being a part of the team. She likes the winning. But I think, she probably feels like it's time just for them to have some time together. She's given, she's basically sacrificed all of that for all of these years so that Coach could be successful. I think that's where it comes from. I think the same is true if you look at Travis this year compared to previous years. Maybe don't go all the way back to chasing Kelce, but if you look at just this year with Taylor Swift, I think people are saying, maybe he's time to move on and start the next chapter in his life. I think probably they're going to get married, to be honest with you. I mean, they seem to be pretty genuinely, affectionate but players get married all the time, man. They have kids all the time. The fact that she's an international superstar, I don't think really requires him to retire. So, given his level of passion, given what his brother's going through and the advice he's getting from him, I just don't see any reality to that. But look, anything can happen, right? I remember Joe Montana telling me he wasn't going to retire until Jennifer Montana told him, "Oh, yes, you are."
Malcolm, I think you had one more. Yeah, that's it. I don't see it either, Dan.
Yeah,
I just like they're too good still at what they're doing, right? Like it's not, tight ends have played a long time in the league. Travis Kelce, it might be entering the golden years at that position, but they're as golden as any tight end we've ever seen play the game. Like he's still not just as good as he ever was, but he's far better than anybody else has ever been at his age.
Yeah, I mean, look at the way he's played these playoffs. We kind of said all season long, he's a tick off. He's just not the same Travis Kelce. He's not as fast as he used to be. He doesn't catch as well. He's distracted. We said all that all season long. And then it's like, whoa, there's Travis. I recognize that guy, and he's playing at a high level. Mahomes is playing at a high level. Coach is coaching at a high level. Why would any of them want to? Guys, I even feel that way about me. Look, this is my 35th season in the National Football League, covering the Chiefs, traveling with the Chiefs. I'm 59 years old. At some point, I'm going to retire. But it ain't now. There's just times are too good, man. When the food's on the table, you eat, right?
Yeah, definitely congrats on 35 years. That's amazing. But my last question here, it seemed like the word of last week was like championship window, Lamar Jackson championship window. Is there, and even more so maybe for the San Francisco 49ers, do these two teams, do they have a legitimate window right now? It seems like there's a lot of young talent, coaches that are sticking around for a while. Like, is there even a number you can put on a quote unquote championship window for these teams?
Well, I think there is. Well, let me put it this way. If you were to look at the Chiefs versus the Bills are in a complete mess with their salary cap. They can't keep that team together. They're going to need to restructure it. So from a window standpoint, the window on that team as it's configured with those players is closing, in my opinion. or has closed, I guess, if you really want to speak honestly. For the Chiefs, a very young team. Our defense, we got rookies and we've got second-year guys. And so, in my opinion, like for the Chiefs, the window has a length to it that some of these other teams that have been trying to stretch it out and kind of make it happen with, free agency, or that to me becomes more the kind of than just looking at a player and saying, look, okay, is Josh Allen's windows closed? No, I don't think so. But the Bills, the way they were configured, yes. The Ravens, is Lamar Jackson's window closed? I mean, I don't think so. I'm not sure sometimes, though, that he's frankly, and I get he may win the MVP this year, but I'm not sure the way they've constructed that team offensively, whether or not that's a window that closes because of his talent. Does that kind of make sense? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, no, he's fine. He's young. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
He's all right. I didn't think he played that poorly, honestly. I think he missed a couple of throws, but I thought Lamar Jackson he wasn't as good as he was in the second half against Houston, but he wasn't as bad as he was before this year in the postseason either. He was okay. They missed some key plays. That play by Xavier Sneed is one of the best I've ever seen. That play may have been the difference in the game, probably was, at least to, the direct outcome. Who knows what would have happened if they got the touchdown, but Lamar Jackson was not the reason the Ravens lost the game. Them not running the ball, to my opinion, is the reason they lost the game. Dan, we appreciate it. Enjoy it. Man. So Tuesday of next week, you'll for sure be in Vegas when we chat, right? You'll already be out there.
I will, yep. Yeah, the team leaves on Sunday, and not really much to do till Monday night. They'll have media, that media night that's a big spectacle where you get all the guys from Brazil, all the reporters coming from Brazil that ask, what kind of perfume does Taylor wear? And really pertinent questions, right? So those are always fun, but it really gets going about Tuesday, Wednesday. Teams will get into practice and walkthroughs, and we'll start kind of, and it basically ramps up kind of every day. A little bit of a lull on Saturday, and then the game on Sunday. But yeah, Tuesday, we're coming to you live from Vegas.
Oh, we cannot wait for it, Dan. Looking forward to it. Here we go again. Another trip to the Super Bowl. Safe travels, and we'll talk again next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Go Chiefs.
There goes Dan Israel, executive producer of the Chiefs Radio Network, here with us every Tuesday during the season on Sports Daily. All right, we appreciate Dan. If you missed anything there, if you're joining us late, you can go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app. Tommy will be back with us. We're going to get more into college basketball. I misspoke a little bit earlier. KU is also in action tonight. I had them Wednesday. They're tonight. K-State is tonight. Shockers are Wednesday. So a big basketball night. You've got a couple of late games tonight. You get K-State early and then KU late. So it's a nice doubleheader for us. It's an opportunity to see both teams play. And it's an opportunity when they're both at home that they both need to come away with wins. We'll dig into it when we return on Sports Daily. All right, welcome back in. We appreciate Dan Israel joining us. Congratulations to Gary for winning our HTO giveaway. Welcome back in here on this Tuesday. Tommy Castor rejoins us here alongside Malcolm Carter. I'm Jacob Albracht. We take you now into some college hoops. So we get both KU and K-State tonight, both at home, both in games they need to win if they're going to continue to contend for a Big 12 title. KU at home against Oklahoma State. The margin at which they win, we can debate about. They're 16.5-point favorites. But K-State at home against Oklahoma, that's a game the Cats have to have, Tommy, as we welcome you in here. It's a game you'll hear on KFH. But K-State, after a brutal week of the schedule, both road games, not games you're expected to win, if they want to hang in this thing until the end, they got to win both of these games this week, and it starts tonight against the Sooners.
Yeah, they've got to bounce back, right? And that game against Houston over the weekend, we all know how good Houston is. We all know about their defensive prowess and all of that. But I don't think that, obviously, most people thought that they would just get the doors blown off in that game over the weekend against the Cougars. So they've got to bounce back against that. Oklahoma is a high caliber opponent in the Big 12. Porter Moser has done a really good job building his team, getting them into the conversation to compete for a conference championship, and of course their top 25 ranking that they currently have right now. So that's definitely going to be a challenge for Kansas State, but all you have to do is go back not that long ago, and the Wildcats took down Baylor on their home court. So they've got to do the same thing against Oklahoma tonight.
Malcolm, when you talk about the Cats, and I don't think that they're going to be able to hang in this until the end, but they have proven me and a lot of people wrong all year long. When you look across the Big 12 and you look at the way this thing is lining out and just what's, in front of them, it is still hard for me to imagine K-State up there with Houston and Kansas, maybe Iowa State. I really like TCU. Baylor's up there. But K-State, they continue to prove the doubters wrong and do this unbelievable thing they're doing this season. Do you think they can be in there in the end against all those teams?
Nah, I don't think so. I think some of the issues that have plagued Kansas State all year even showed up in that game against Houston. Especially when you're talking about the Big 12 conference, I do think there is a little bit of polarity there when you're talking about those top tier teams in the conference and then kind of those second and third tier teams. I think Houston far and above is the best team in the conference. And then kind of it subsequently follows after that. But I think K-State, they're a competitive ball club, and I think come tourney time, they'll definitely make these games a little more competitive. But I do think that the conference is starting to separate itself a little bit, and just K-State's kind of on the other side of that.
Tommy, what do you think there? I mean, the Cats, we've talked at length about how impressive the job they've done this year has been. No Naquan Tomlin, right? You lose 2 All-Americans, but yet here they are. I don't want to doubt them here. Where are you with the Cats' chances now in this jumbled mess to somehow end up on top of it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty impressed all season long with the way that Jerome Tang has gotten this team to rally, and I think that they've done a great job, obviously, in really close games that come down to the wire, games that go to overtime. You need a last-second shot. That's going to bode well, I think, for the Wildcats come tournament time. But if we're talking just specifically about the Big 12 itself, I was, like I said, impressed by them, but I'm hopeful that the outing against Houston over the weekend was kind of an anomaly and not something that will continue, because I don't think many people had the Wildcats to win the game, but I definitely don't think that kind of blowout was expected. So as far as what their prospects are for the conference itself, I don't think that they have just the roster to win the conference, but do I think that they can be in the top 3 or 4? Sure. And it's going to come down to, I think, the last week or weekend of the regular season. And there's probably going to be a close game that goes down to the last possession or even overtime that will determine what place the Wildcats get in the conference.
Yeah, we'll see. Kansas, on the other hand, I think we can more clearly see a path for them just because of, and it may simply be based on preseason expectations. They're sitting there though in that same jumbled mess, and they have work to do. They got the same record as K-State right now in the league. You've got to now pass 3 teams ahead of you with 11 to go. And we know that this team has not been particularly good on the road. They're 2-3 on the road this year. Malcolm, is there a path? I mean, KU, are they going to be able to get there? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to imagine them winning enough games. We talked about this with Shreyas Laddha yesterday. With what you think it'll take to win the league, I don't want to bet against Bill Self because he's done it so many times, but it's hard to find it. If you want to find the amount of wins they're going to have it, to win this thing.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed with KU in their game against Iowa State. Typically, they defend the 3 much better than they did, and I mean, to me, they just went out there and got beat. So that was a little discouraging to me as we're moving toward tournament play as to the kind of the overall expectation for KU. I think they'll be there to hang around, and there will be those games. There'll be a game in March where we're like, wow, KU is the KU that we thought that they were. But to me, the litmus test is going to be this game against Houston coming up in a couple days. If they're not able to at least keep that game close at home against Houston, then I don't even know if you can call the rest of the season even something worth speculating over. I think Houston at that point just takes the cake.
Tommy, you're KU guy.
Yeah.
In your most optimistic light,
Yeah.
do you see it for the Jayhawks?
I do, because you've got Hunter Dickinson, who, by all accounts, looks to be at least one of the leading candidates for Player of the Year. You've got Kevin McCullough, who might be the best all-around player in America on your roster, a veteran in DeJuan Harris, and I know that everybody wants DeJuan Harris to do more and more offensively and all of that. That's just not his game, and it's just, I'm done expecting that to happen. But I do think that there are other things that he can provide the team, the athleticism of KJ Adams and the way that Johnny Furphy has kind of exploded onto the scene in the last couple of weeks. That's all well and good. That's great. They need to have more out of their bench. But what we all know about Bill Self is that as a season progresses and as you get deeper into conference play and into March, his rotation tightens up anyway. You don't really a lot of times see players that, are not earning the trust of Bill Self get meaningful minutes in the months of February and March. That usually doesn't happen with any of his teams. I guess one of the good things, already for KU is that they already don't have a deep bench. So even though, we might have seen players like Elmarco Jackson and Nick Timberlake and Parker Brown and others get extended minutes, I don't think we're going to see that quite as much as conference play continues to progress. I think one thing, to Malcolm's point when he's talking about the way that the Jayhawks defend the 3, teams make shots against the Jayhawks from the perimeter. That's what happens. And I think that there's been a narrative that, teams just shoot the ball really well from 3 against the Jayhawks. And I wonder if really it's that they don't defend it particularly well overall. And that kind of, I think, plays into that a little bit. So they're going to have to get better at that. They're going to have to find other ways to generate offense, especially when Hunter Dickinson gets double teamed in the post. They're not a particularly good shooting, 3-point shooting team anyway. The Jayhawks are not. And so that's going to be a challenge for them. But I do think that just based off of the experience and the talent of the starting 5, I think that they can get it done.
I think that they can, but whether they will or not, I just don't know. And it has, let me say this, it has less to do with Kansas and more to do with how many teams it will take. I think this thing ends in a tie. I don't think there's any one team that's going to be able to take it. It's how many teams get into the tie and how many losses do those teams have that get the most interesting to me. So if it's, let's say it's 6 losses, then I think KU's in. If it's 4 or 5, though, I think we've seen enough to know. And again, I said this, I think I said this yesterday. That doesn't mean I don't think KU can still win a national championship, make a run in the tournament. It doesn't mean any of those things. I'm just talking about winning the Big 12 here and already having 3 losses with that many games left to play. That's what makes it seem so difficult to overcome to me. I still think there's a great chance that KU is the best team in this league that makes the deepest run in the tournament. All of that stuff is still in play. It's more about, like, mathematically, do we still think they're going to be able to get it done? And Tommy, I guess that's where I go.
Yeah.
And Shreya brought this up yesterday. If it's 5 losses with the games you can just look at on the schedule, can KU really navigate that with only 2 more losses? That seems unlikely.
Yeah, they have to go 9-2 in their remaining conference games to match what their conference record was a year ago. And the schedule is brutal. So I'm not sure that a 13-5 conference record is really realistic. I think that it can be done. Will it be done? I'm not sure. I kind of agree that if the winning team in the Big 12 has 6 losses, then I think Kansas can be one of them. I think they can tie for that. Then you're looking at an 8-3 record over your last 11 games in the conference. The way that this team presents itself to me, the way that I kind of see this playing out for the Jayhawks is either tying for a Big 12 title with 6 losses or being 1 game, maybe 2 games behind. But I think that they enter the tournament as, I don't know, a 2 or 3 seed, and then they're going to be an extremely difficult out in March Madness. In fact, I think that you can have the discussion of who the best team in the conference is, and that's fine. But I also think that I think it's worth having a conversation about who the most difficult out in the tournament is going to be. That's different than the best overall talent. I think that Kansas will probably be the most difficult team out.
KU will have the experience advantage,
Yeah,
probably over anybody that they play outside of, like, if they matched up with FAU. Quick picks. I'm assuming, Malcolm, what do you got on the? We're all picking KU. We don't need to waste our time with that.
Yeah.
What do you got on K-State minus 3.5 against OU tonight?
3.5. That's a lot of points. I mean, I'm leaning towards KU at home straight out, but 3.5 is a lot for me.
K-State. Yeah, I think I like a K-State money line too. Tommy?
I'm going to take Oklahoma, and the reason I'm taking Oklahoma is just because I was shocked about the way that the Wildcats played against Houston over the weekend. I know they need to bounce back. That's tough. Like, that's kind of a demoralizing loss when you lose by that many too. I know Houston's a great team, but that's rough. So I'm going to take Oklahoma.
It's a bounce back spot for K-State also, and the 2 road games, all those things play into it. All right, when we come back, just a second, are you guys even entertaining and enjoying these conspiracy NFL Taylor Swift rumors? I'll ask that question when we return on Sports Daily. right, welcome back real quick. Quick pivot. We are hearing that the Jackie Robinson statue that was stolen from League 42 has been found. Bob Lutz, the executive director, also a host on this network, says it's been dismantled and burned at Garvey Park. A news conference will begin shortly. I don't know if they're going to announce an arrest. Here's what I can tell you from yesterday, just intuitively. The police found the vehicle involved. They told us it was not stolen. So, that would lead me to intuitively believe they know who did it, right? I don't know if they've made an arrest, but they know whose truck it is. And if they're not saying the truck was stolen, then you know whose truck it is. So we'll see. We'll get some clarity. I don't know what will be announced at the news conference. Who knows the circumstances, whether it was was panic and trying to destroy evidence, whether it was something more sinister, who knows? But that is the development. They have found the statue after they found the truck that took the statue yesterday. Everything about it is disgraceful, obviously, no matter what the circumstances are. But, I think one thing, Malcolm, and you've been in the community long enough to know the importance of League 42 here. The community and really the country has rallied around that organization. That's been awesome to see. And you look to the bright side in these spots, and hopefully the exposure there to League 42 can help everybody realize just how great that group is.
Yeah, I think that there's sort of a dramatic irony, to all of this. You just mentioned that, bringing more awareness and, bringing light to these certain situations, I think speaks directly to the spirit of Jackie Robinson and what his mission was, not only as an athlete, but as a civil rights activist. So I think as, as demoralizing it was to hear the news about the statue, I do think that as a community, we'll come out better from this situation. And, ultimately, it's just a reminder that, that these things happen. These things are happening in our community. They are going on. These things have not left our community. But if we come together and we stick together, we can get through anything.
Tommy, I hope, if nothing else, we learn motive today. I don't think they're going to announce an arrest, but I think they may have an idea there. We'll see what police say, but they understand the high profile nature of this too, and they're going to give every opportunity to keep it in the forefront there. But maybe, Tommy, we can get a little bit to just understand why this happened in the first place.
Yeah, I definitely want justice to be served, as everybody does in this situation. And it's not just a statue being stolen. It's what that statue represents and what League 42 represents to the community. And, I want to say a shout out to Bob Lutz. I can't think of anybody better to handle this situation with the way that he has. And just, I know it's tough, and I know that it's been, an emotional and really upsetting time after this happened because of what the statue represents and because of what League 42 represents in Wichita. He's handled it with grace. He's handled it with class. I know that he's mad as hell, as he should be. And I think that just the way that the community has rallied around him and the organization has been incredible. So shout out to Bob for just, the great job he has done with this situation. But then at a bigger picture, just the way that he has ran this organization, it's incredible. And hopefully it, like you mentioned, leads to more exposure for the mission of League 42 and gets more community involvement.
Guys, we've had 3 teenagers shot and killed this past weekend. 3 teenagers shot and killed. The response is always find the good people, right? Find the heroes, find the people that are making a difference to where those things don't happen.
Yeah.
Things like League 42 help those things not happen, help give young people a different direction. So the timing of all this is tragic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Hopefully good comes out of it.
Yep.
And more things like League 42 can help our community prevent the things like we saw this past weekend. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back, wrap up Sports Daily right after this. All right, everybody, that does it for us. Don't forget, you've got the Chiefs Kingdom show at 6 o'clock right here on KFH, and that leads you right up until tip time for K-State Hoops at 7. KU also in action tonight at 8. We'll be back tomorrow to break all of that down. Regular programming up until then, including Bob and Jeff here locally from 2 to 4. Malcolm, appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir,
Good luck
yes,
with life.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you. Have fun.
Been a pleasure to have Malcolm in on these Tuesdays. We will be back Wednesday, Tommy and I. We'll have it all covered for you. See you then.